Hi, my name is Philip Willie, and I'm here to give a beginner's guide to what responsive web design is, and a couple of tricks and things to try if you're just getting started out with responsive web design like I am. One of the first things I'm going to talk about is what responsive web design is. And a good example of this is when I started one of my classes recently. I was out of town and I was waiting to hear about financial aid, and I was checking my email constantly, and I finally did get a message from financial aid, and I go to check it on my phone and I get this picture here. This is right off my phone, something like this, and when I could see just barely that the message came in, and I could even scroll to the right a little bit, but then when I would click on the email, all I would get is just a very small sliver at the bottom of my phone on the screen there, and no matter what I would do, there was no way for me to see what that email said, and it was very frustrating. I was trying to check in on a scholarship and see if that was all taken care of before the deadline, and I ended up finally finding a workaround where I was able to print the email and then download it as a PDF onto my phone where I could read it. But it took me a while and it was frustrating, and that's where responsive web design comes in. According to SimilarWeb's State of the Mobile Web US 2015 report, 56% of consumer traffic to leading U.S. websites was now on mobile devices. And another study here on your screen is a study of when the mobile browser traffic, or users in this case, passed the regular desktop users, which is what web designers have been designing for years in the past. So that's where responsive web design comes in. Think of it like water, and water takes the shape of any container, so it fits. And when we're designing websites today, that's what we want to do. We want to make that content liquid or flexible like water, so that whatever shape and size of a device, it'll fit and look like it's supposed to be there. In the past, web designers would create two different websites separate, one for PCs and the regular computers, and another one for mobile or smaller devices, and it was time consuming and expensive, as you can imagine. And as I said before, with mobile use up so far, they had to find a more creative and more efficient way to design pages. That's where responsive design again comes in. It does three things about it. It makes a web page look good on any device, uses only HTML and CSS, and it's not a program or JavaScript. Today I'm just going to touch on a few basic techniques for responsive design for students like me or anyone who's just kind of getting started out. And one of the first things you can do is set the viewport using this code below or on the screen. This does accomplishes a few things, but as you can see here, here's how a certain web page would look without the viewport meta tag on the left, and then you can see how it fills up the page on the right. Again, like water. Another thing you can do, actually I'm going to go back one slide if I can. Oh, we're going to keep going. Using responsive grid view is another thing beginners can try and should try to work with. In this case, a lot of times 12 columns works well. It gives us flexibility to be able to move things around for different size screens. First off, I want to start by using the following, adding the following to our CSS. This here will make sure that the padding and border are included in the total width and height of all the elements, so there's no overflow. To establish the 12 columns, we're going to add this to our CSS. This will make one class for each of the 12 columns and adds another number defining how many columns the section should span, so that we can arrange the size of each individual aspect of our web page. Then we want to make the columns float to the left using the code here. You can copy and paste this right into your CSS. One thing we'll have to do is go back into our HTML and make each row wrap in a div. We can do that, accomplish that by using this code. Notice that the numbers will always add up to 12. And the last step to accomplishing this grid view would be to add the following. It's a style that clears the flow to prevent elements being taken out because our columns are all floating to the left. And once we get this in, we could add colors and styles to our preference using more code. Looking forward, other steps we could take is a media query, which will block certain aspects of a page if conditions are true. And also breakpoints are very common. Breakpoints let us set how a page will react differently on each side of a breakpoint. This lets us design for a range of sizes. So we could set breakpoints for different pixels and then define how we want that to look. And that's how we can get different sized devices, the screen, the viewable screen, to display differently based on what they have. One place I would suggest starting is w3schools.com. It has a vast wealth of information and was also the main resource for what you've seen on this tutorial. Another great tool to utilize in responsive style sheets. One such sheet from that same website that makes it easy for beginners to develop a responsive design is a w3.css. Again, you get this right from W3 Schools. But just to show you an example of the style sheet and what it can do for you in making it easier to make a responsive website, is this changes with the size, even with the size of the window that it's in the browser, it's responsive. If you'll watch, it'll rearrange itself. In this case, restack to meet the size of the browser. It gives you examples, in fact, of this one that you could copy and paste and work with right into your own HTML. One of the really cool things I found that I think would be beneficial to other beginners, I know I'm excited to try and use it, are the templates offered here at W3 Schools. There's a bunch of them that I think you might want to try for learning and to make your own websites. The cool thing about these are they're free, and like it says here, you're free to modify, share, do whatever you want with them. But if you take a look, there are a ton of these already set up that you can play with, change the HTML to fit your content, and modify from there. See how changing the style sheet and the HTML affect your website to learn. But this is just an awesome resource. If I pick this one, as you can see here, I've got the HTML doc here. I can copy this with the style sheet and change the content. As you can see here, play with it, make it fit the website I want to make, change background pictures and whatnot, and watch it work in real time. I think that's the exciting thing about these templates. I mean, and that's just one tool. There's tools everywhere. I did a quick search, just found hundreds of both free and pay tools to build responsive web apps, with code and without code too, if you're not into coding it yourself, but you still want to know how it works. So I hope this gives you a basic overview of what responsive web design is, and some places to start with your learning, and get to where you can master it and be more functional with it. Thanks for taking the time. Talk to you next time.